All right.
Fun. No, I got to tell you, folks, I've known Jay now for 8 books.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember edition 1 of Maximize Your Medicare. That's where we first met. It's always fun chatting with him, and learn a lot from him about a topic of which I don't know a lot, and that's the fun of it. And he's one of the brightest guys I know, and has too damn many initials after his name.
My original name's too short. I needed more letters, Art.
That's what it was. Yes. Oh.
I got
good.
Art Lewis. We've had who have we had? We've had Bob Powell. We've had Kevin Cole. We've got Art Lewis, who is a celebrity. Pretty much everyone in the listening area, mid-Michigan, knows WSGW. If they know WSGW, that usually comes with one name, and that is Art Lewis. He's here today. Welcome, Art.
Thank you. Glad to follow in the footsteps of Kevin Cole. He's a buddy.
Of course, and so. Yes, he's been part of another, certain pillar of, a different walk of life, but absolutely a well-known name. Absolutely. Art, how long is it? It's a year pandemic now. So you've been
1 year next week that I've been at home, that I've been broadcasting at home, and no end in sight. That's why I've strung up banners in my office and have a myriad of equipment. I could, if I wouldn't disrupt things too much, I could probably show you the equipment a little bit. Excuse my reach and things moving around. I'm going to just take this down here, and there's.
Wow.
So this is the microphone I'm using. Right, where is it? There it is.
There you go.
That's the microphone I'm using right now. That's not the one I use for broadcast. For broadcast, I'm reaching. Sorry, folks. But I use a headset microphone like that.
All right.
For everyday broadcast. And then I have, this is some of my broadcast equipment here. It's my internet connection that allows me to get up on the air. It goes to the studio. And these are just audio. The silver box right there is the interface with the internet. The 2 black boxes are line balancing boxes. And the one on the bottom, that big, long, skinny one, is the one that's giving me trouble right now where the microphone cuts out. It's a voice processor.
When we've met in other locations, a sponsor, for example, has hosted us when I've been, your guest. Is that what you carry, or is it like some kind of like black box that you carry?
No, the one piece of equipment that I showed you that's my broadcast piece, that's the remote equipment. That's what I'm using. I'm using my remote equipment to broadcast. I better move that back a little bit, like that. Yeah, that's the remote broadcast piece of equipment that I use when we're on remote. I don't use the audio stuff. That doesn't go with me. But this box does. The box with the mixer and the head end that connects to the internet. It's all done by Wi-Fi.
How much has it changed from, I guess, 50 years now? We discussed this off air. 55 years? What is it, 58 years now?
Yeah, they're about something like that. Since 1963, so yeah, 58 years.
Was it a full room of stuff, or?
It's the difference between a Model T and a Ferrari. The equipment when I came in, you had knobs and tubes for a console. You had tape recorders, turntables, cart machines for commercials, which were tape. Now it's all computer. There is nothing that isn't computerized. There are no turntables. There's no tape recorders. Everything is in the computer. Even the commercials you record go into a computer.
Sure.
So you don't have any old-fashioned equipment at all. This piece of equipment that I use for remotes is probably 8 or 10 years old. That's ancient. There's a newer model of that somewhere along the line. There's been several, as a matter of fact.
When are you going to start adopting the video interview, format? A lot of other stations.
Yeah, we're there now.
Oh, you are?
A month ago, we started doing video of me doing my radio show. It's a talking head. You're just watching me.
Right.
We are using StreamYard as our entry point into the web services.
So is it going to multiple at the same time,
Yeah, it
simulcast?
goes to twitch.tv, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, all live. And then it's there for you to go back and watch. But it's me talking to people or talking to listeners,
Right.
but all you see is me. We have the ability now with links in StreamYard. Like I could send you a link the next time you're on with me.
Sure.
You would do what we're doing right now.
Right.
The only thing we'd have to remember is we're not doing television. We're doing radio. So while you and I could look at each other, we have to remember we're on the radio. You have to avoid things like, well, look at this. See how this is, Unless
Well, I
I
would think-
do what I just did and took that camera and went all over the place.
Right.
I am looking at ways to put in another camera so that I could shoot down on the equipment so people could see what's happening. We're talking about that as another method,
I'm sure there's some certain software that allows multiple cameras to have,
Oh, I have it. Yeah, I
Right.
have it.
Right.
So
Because we have multi-camera, now. So
yeah. Oh, it's the only thing I found is I found some switching equipment that won't work with these internet cameras because they're USB. You plug them in. I need HDMI, so I may have to change camera types or something. But I'm not going to do that. I know a company that should do that for me. I don't know yet. There's all kinds of things we're talking about.
okay, well, now that we're done with technology corners, let's go back to art. So you've been a year in the strangest year almost ever, but I don't want to say ever. You've got 58 years underneath your belt. Where does this past 12 months rank for art?
Number one.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I've never lived through anything like this. I don't know anybody else that has.
But there have been war. There's been war.
Yeah, there's been all of that stuff, but that's news, and and I deal with news every day. Obviously, things to remember. You remember where you were when 9/11 happened. Sure, there are a lot of important things, but as a spread of time, I've never lived anything like 2020. I mean, and I don't know anybody that has.
No.
Because it has
wondering,
affected everyone. In terms of a year that has had impact on me and people, 2020, I don't see how you can, unless you go back to 1918 and the last time this happened. But I can't think of anything that's had more impact on a population than what happened to us. And the world, we're not alone.
So you're working at home. Have you been vaccinated? You're high on the list.
I was vaccinated. That was another story. I got a call from a doctor in Saginaw representing the Medical Society. They were having a problem registering minorities and wanted my help, wanted to know if we could do a show. I said, sure. And I was about to get called anyway. I was on the list.
Sure.
And I'm 78 years old, so
Right.
I was there.
Yep.
And he said, well, rather than just wait for the list, we'll just come over to your house and give you the shots, you and your wife. I said, works for me. So we did a shot on the air.
Okay.
And the whole purpose was to get people involved and understand that it's necessary. And I checked later and found out that I really didn't jump the line. I was going to get called anyway. So it worked out well. And I got my second shot.
Is it your sense, or maybe you would know from like people calling in, and maybe it's been a topic or not? Is it your sense that people are looking forward to the vaccine and, like a breath of fresh air, so it kind of liberates them in a way?
The people I've heard from, most of the people I've heard from have been calling out of frustration because they're on the list and haven't been called, and they want to get called. They want the protection. There have been a few that say, I'll never get the shot, and all of that. Listen, you're never going to please everyone all the time. In this case, though, I sure hope 70% of the population or more get the vaccine. Otherwise, we'll never get to herd immunity. and we'll be carrying this thing forever. And we're vaccinated. That's not a guarantee. We don't know how long that's going to last. So time will tell.
When you got the shot, were you broadcasting live at that time, or did you record
First shot. It was the first day we did video. It was the impetus to do the video.
I see.
So the doc sat right next to me here in the office and gave me the shot on camera as I was describing it on the radio. And then I interviewed the two doctors for the program talking about COVID and ramifications and all that stuff. So yeah, that was the first time we did video. And from then on, it was constant.
It's been interesting. It just happened. I'm not sure if you saw this story the other day. LeBron passed on the comment entirely, which I found interesting and just a strange topic to take a pass, because he's been speaking up, as in my view, and other people can disagree with it. I'm not a person that would have said just stick to the basketball court. He's got the right, and he has leverage.
He has leverage, and if he can use it for a positive message, fine.
And I found it weird that, and just like I just took note that, he said that then is the private matter, to say that, as opposed to, oops, hey, Art, we've got the sound disconnection here. There you go.
Hollywood and sports types, I think, somehow think they're more important than everybody with their message. They're not. Sometimes I wish they'd just shut up. But in this particular case, the more celebrities that have high profile that can sit before people and say, look, I got the shot, you should get it, is a positive thing for society. But I tell callers all the time when they call up, particularly political viewpoints, some of them don't like Dr. Fauci, for example, and things like that. I say, look, when I get sick, I don't call a talk show host for advice. I don't call a politician for advice. I go to a doctor. Remember that. So when it comes to medical, you don't mind, I'll listen to the doctor.
Right.
Well, what really amazes me is how many people pay a doctor for their advice and then disregard it. I don't understand that.
Well,
never will.
Well, I can give you a different perspective. As coming from medical household, I very frequently disregarded the advice, but I don't think that was because...
Well, that's because he was your parent. Nobody listens to their parents.
Okay. That'll be my story.
Yeah, your dad was a doc. Why would you listen to him?
We've had this. Your life, you're sitting there, with the banner, and now you're not in your van going all to these different places. The businesses, are they continuing to try to, you've had these sponsored on location visits. Has all that ground to a complete stop, or have you had
not a complete stop? I've done a couple. We've done some remotes, a few. Okay. I've got one this Saturday, for example, and I've got a few coming up in the next couple of months, but not nearly to the frequency we did before. Obviously, for some businesses, they've had to pull in the horns,
right?
Because COVID reduced their income too,
right?
But a lot of it the corporation put a ban on it for a while.
I see.
And then when they finally released us to do remotes, they said, you'll sanitize the van, you'll sanitize all the equipment, and you'll sit 6 feet apart from your guest wherever you are. You'll sanitize the equipment they use. So, they put out a protocol on how we were to do remotes. I have to tell you, Alpha Media, which owns our radio stations, is just a great company to work for. A lot of people can't say that about their bosses. They are a great company to work for. They care about their employees. They care about their employees. They care about the communities they serve. There are times when they put all of that ahead of the dollar.
Wow.
So, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Yet they're great broadcasters.
That's pretty unique, right? Traditional media having to fight against, the internet machine and,
well, they still do that, But there is a philosophy. I don't know if you've heard of conscientious capitalism.
Mhm.
It's a philosophy that has certain basic tenets, principles, if you will, and Alpha would qualify for it in a heartbeat. They sent out these principles in a chart that we have hanging up all over the place. It's really who we are and what we do and how we do it. And the number one word right up front is integrity. And then they go from there. So it's a great company, and it's one of the reasons I keep working. I mean, people ask, why are you still working? 78 years old. I just turned 78. I can't think of anything I'd rather do, so I might as well get paid for it.
Right.
I have an enormous amount of vacation time that I don't use all of, and my wife would throw me out of the house, which she's been tempted a few times because we're home. But, realistically, it's actually, between my wife and myself, when we talk about this, it's worked out better than we thought. Because, when you're in close quarters for a long period of time, you can work on each other. So we create shopping trips. If we get annoyed, I got to go to the store.
I got to go to the store.
Yeah, I've been there.
So speaking about vacation and things like that, you've been the leader of a tour, kind of like tourism and vacation packages. Now that's not part of WSD. I never.
I know. Well, there's more than one thing going on here.
Okay.
From 1994 to 2008, my wife and I owned a tour company.
I see. Okay.
And that was independent of the radio station. I was an advertiser. I bought time on it while I was working at the station. And we ran 50, 65 trips a year. Oh. Some of them as much as 19 days, some of them one-dayers, but we did a lot. And we had a contract to provide service to Greektown Casino.
I see. Okay.
From Bay City, Saginaw, from Flint, from Lansing. We did that through 2008. And we got out of the business just before the economy went south.
Well, just before the housing crisis, then.
You got it. Right. And the tour business went right with it. So we got out in time. But it was fun. And I was also chairman of the Saginaw County Convention and Visitors Bureau for 4 years during that period. A number of years ago, it was probably, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, we started having conversation in the radio station about, can we do a couple of trips where we sell trips to listeners, station makes a little money, everybody makes a little money, everybody has a good time, and it's a great listener event. And so the decision was, yes, let's do that. Well, who would they come to? The former tour operator, obviously.
Right.
You know what you're doing. You do it. You do it.
You know all about it, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
So, and it was pretty funny because one of the bosses at the time thought this particular individual knew more than everybody about everything. And I'd sit down and I'd say, well, we have, here are some trips. No, we're not going to do any of those. Let's do this, this, and this. I said, well, they're not going to sell. Oh, yeah. Well, they didn't sell, so. But the boss we have now, I mean, when he got to the radio station, I went into him and I said, we've been doing these travel things twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting together a list for next year. I'll bring them to you and pick what you want. And he said, somebody told me you were a tour operator. Is that right? I said, yeah. He said, what are you asking me for? Just go do it. What a change, it was great.
Right.
So we've done, I don't know, 5 or 6 cruises. We've done a number of trips, national and international. The last one we did before COVID hit was Switzerland. And so it's been fun. I'm looking forward to doing it again. But right now, the corporation says we're not even looking at it. So I don't even talk about it. But I've been in touch with the travel agents we use and the tour company that we use. We've used 2. We used Colette for the international stuff. We've used Globus. We cruise on Celebrity Cruise Lines. And I have some travel agents I use, and then an old contact from my tour days who's with Colette, who I deal with directly. So, we can still do it. Just a question of when. I'm thinking that, by maybe of September of this year, I can start looking at a spring trip
for
and maybe a fall trip.
2022.
Yeah, right. Nothing this year. It's not going to happen this year. My wife and I have a vacation booked in August. We have our fingers crossed to Maine. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
You've got experience in here, but although not with the pandemic, do you think that people are interested in going on, cruises are out, or cruises are going to be, still going to be part of, what's Art, the tour operator, with expertise in
I will tell you this. I'll tell you this. The cruise lines are wondering where they're going to find enough cabin space in 2022.
Really?
They are swamped with bookings right now for late 2021, 2022. And to compound that, they've sold off or scrapped a number of their older ships. So, it's going to be interesting in the beginning, but there are some great bargains out there. I'll give you an example of how COVID has impacted fares. My wife and I had a trip booked to New Orleans and San Antonio last March, 2 days before COVID closed down the French Quarter. So we canceled on a Friday for a trip we were going on a Sunday. The airlines, Delta, gave us a full refund. And so we decided, okay, well, listen, let's rebook a trip in next year. Let's say, let's do something maybe in the fall. All right. So we booked another trip. Not only did the gal on the phone tell me the fares were so cheap, we each had $600 in flight credit over and above the booked trip.
Right.
Then we had to cancel that one. Now we have flights booked in August to Maine, first class, no charge, because everything is so inexpensive. All of our flight credits covered everything.
Is it your thought that the persons who are going on your tours in the past are also itching? Because what you just described for me sounds like, the price has been pushed down and you've got lower capacity on cruise ships. That's slightly different than everybody who has delayed is going to be, a willing passenger.
Everyone who's delayed is going to be a willing passenger.
That's what you think. Okay.
Yeah, because they've been cooped up. Let's face it, people are dying to get. Look what happens when they open up restaurants. They get packed. They're supposed to operate at 25%. The ones I've been in, they weren't even close. People are wanting to get out. They want normalcy. They want to get back to life.
Of course.
They want to get back to life as it was. If you hear my phone ringing, don't worry about it. But it just, my dog is howling all of a sudden. The phone was ringing. I've never heard him do that before. Monkey. It's my dog. So yeah, people are cooped up and they want to get out. So I suspect, the day comes along that we put a trip on, whatever it is, and I suspect I suspect it's going to be a blowout, and I suspect the first one we do is going to be domestic.
Yeah. Because
while people are interested in travel, maybe not quite as much going overseas yet.
Right.
And you can't even get into Canada right now. I'm a color analyst for the Saginaw Spirit Hockey Club. No hockey.
Right.
I haven't played in a year.
You can't go there.
No, they can't cross over. They can't get the American kids into Canada. And Canada's locked down now because Ontario for a long time had very few cases and they wanted to keep it that way. So they locked everything down. And then they got hit with a big surge of cases while they were locked down.
Yeah.
So they've doubled down on the lockdown. And if you go across the border, you better be real essential and have tested and all that stuff.
Have you gone much outside the general area? Because I have. So, I've traveled inside the United States, to different states as well as to different cities inside of Michigan, things like that. What about yourself? Have you kind of stayed local, generally speaking?
Totally local. This Sunday, we're probably going to drive down to Detroit.
I
That's as
think you're
far
in
as we've
for a
gotten.
surprise. And I mean, I spend a lot of time, about 50% of my time in Ann Arbor. I can tell you that the streets in Ann Arbor on a given day are not as busy.
Oh,
Not
oh,
even close to up
no.
here. Even
Yeah.
up here.
It's a bigger question. What are companies going to do with all their office space when
Yeah.
people all work at home?
Yeah.
Because they're moving that way.
Oh,
They've
sure.
discovered they can have people work at home, and as long as they're productive, and that's the key, they don't have to rent office space. They can rent out their office space to somebody else, or they can shut down buildings. It's going to be interesting to see the aftermath.
Oh, we're definitely going to see some ripple effect from that. I mean, I'm not sure. The downtown Detroit's slightly different, right? Because you've got renovations and
That's a
from
renaissance.
a renaissance. Ann Arbor, however, is different. I mean, you've already have established,
Yeah.
and
Well, but you also have the college, so you have an
no,
advantage.
of course. But even then, it's going to be interesting because there's so many. Besides the college, I'm just talking about away from the campus proper. You've got office buildings, fairly largish.
Sure.
Ann Arbor's not that. I mean, it's big-ish. It's not a huge
No,
town.
it's not a
It's
major city.
no. And so, it will be very interesting to see when people, get saying that, work from home is going to be the absolute, normal
Yeah.
for some set of people.
However, it should be pointed out, one of the reasons gas prices are spiking right now is there's been a huge demand for gasoline because more people are driving again,
Hmm.
which goes back to what I said about being cooped up and wanting to get out. So couple the gas prices with the refinery closings and the world price of oil, gas has gone up, and it's probably not done. People are going to get out more and more and more, and you can expect to pay more.
Well, no, especially if the weather, the spring is coming, weather is getting
Yes,
better.
64 degrees today. Yay! Clean the golf clubs. Yay!
Which would just mean that it'll feel even worse when it snows in the middle of April. But okay,
Yeah, well, yeah. It's Michigan. What do you want?
for today, it's fine. So life isn't going to be in, you're broadcasting from your basement or from your study, and that's going to be going for the foreseeable future. And then if you reflected back, and I can't even remember if we said this before the break or not, this pandemic year, the weirdest year, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
this is for me, number one. Number one, strangest year in my career, in my life. I mean, we all remember what we were doing on 9/11 and things of that nature when they landed on the moon. You can vividly recall them, but that's one day or a couple of months period of time. This seems lifelong. I mean, it's been a whole year. How many things can you remember that took a whole year to resolve? And it's not resolved yet.
It's not
So,
resolved.
yeah. So who knows? I mean, I'm more interested at my age in what government's going to do to save Medicare.
I actually don't think that's
I don't think it's a problem either because
no.
they can't afford to lose the votes of all the people getting
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. I'm not sure.
Our political commentary, folks, for the day.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how happy I would be if I were 28 years old because a Snickers bar is going to cost $75
Well,
someday.
yeah. But having said that, all right, and this is my let's get political. Why not?
That's okay. This isn't a WSGW
That's
show.
right. That's right.
So,
It's always been my gripe with this notion of raising the minimum wage, and they keep wanting to go up and up and up. Don't they realize that it costs jobs and prices when that happens? If a company hires 20 people at $10 an hour, and now they're told they've got to pay $15 an hour, well, they got to get that money someplace. Either they only hire 15 people to do the same work, or they raise their prices to cover that cost. And it affects everyone. And, it's somehow, I don't know what it is about government, but they forget the only money they have is what we give them. Oh, yeah, they could crank up the printing press, but then
that's what I was going to say.
inflation goes through the roof. So they can't afford to do that either.
Not so far, right? I mean, they've been proven. I think that there's an external factor, right? I mean, now that we're here on political corner, and there's also macroeconomics corner, which is that, you know, the old construct, you would have had that to be the case, right? The government prints money, and then all of a sudden you'd have inflation. But the buffer, candidly speaking, and I don't think in the United States we get a lot of this information, which is that you have to remember 1.7 billion people and another 1.1 billion in India have basically gone from fifth world to first world.
China
and
and India.
Result, they've cushioned what would have been huge inflationary pressure. Right?
Yeah, but all the money still comes from us.
Yeah, no, I understand, but you see what I'm saying? In other words, if you're paying for a commodity good, you're buying a commodity good built or made in the People's Republic of China, right, where the wage, in other words, the end product didn't go higher.
No, but here's the but. If you keep pushing the national debt, and we're at 27 trillion now, and climbing, it's going to go up another 2 billion this week. At some point in time, trillion. At some point in time, you got to pay the piper.
I'm not disputing any of that. I'm just talking about, okay, why that has been kind of turned on its head, or a countervailing reason of why it hasn't happened until now. Oh, I'm with you. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was saying that, a Snickers is going to be $75 at some point, because that is the, we only have in world history hyperinflation and, huge downward in economic history when this kind of thing, happens, excessive printing.
I seem to remember Jimmy Carter at 20% inflation. You remember those days?
I don't, but I know that it is.
You must have studied it, though.
Right. No, exactly. At 20%, and then the hurdle rate to the corn farmer at that point is notably different.
Yeah. And this notion of, for example, I love it when people say, "Oh, you got to tax the corporations." Tax the corporations. Where do they get their money?
Right.
Guess who pays?
Yeah.
It all comes back to our pocket. I don't care how you get there. I love it when they say, "Well, it's not a tax, it's a fee." So where does that come from? It always, semantics in economics, and you studied it. I know you're much better versed on it than I am, but it's always befuddled me how we use terms in economics and somehow ignore the basics. Where does it all come from? So
we will see. So speaking about, when people spew out political stuff, how does Art handle when, I'm not sitting there. Before we spoke a couple of weeks ago, I listened to the hour prior to I got to getting on, and I don't even remember the topic. All I remember is man, this Art's a better person than I would have hung up.
Well, I get that a lot. How did you let that happen? Well, listen, it's my job. It's my job.
I would have hung up.
That's what keeps it going.
In all your years, I'm sure this is, we've got maybe a more polarized or outwardly polarized society now.
No doubt about it.
But I'm sure you've got decades of experience of hearing incidents. Is now the height of that as well, of the calls, or do you remember?
It's the height of polarization. No doubt about that.
Is it polarization or spoken out loud polarization? From your point of view, you're older. Both. That's why.
It's both. It's both. I have a theory. My theory is the far right and the far left make all the noise. Most Americans don't live there.
Right.
Most Americans live in the middle. They may have some conservative views, some liberal views, combination thereof, which is why I'm so insistent on staying centralized and looking at things from a common sense viewpoint. But they make all the noise, and they're the ones that get all the attention.
Well, if they don't make the noise, they won't get on they won't be on anyone's radar.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
exactly. And Richard Nixon had it right when he said there's a great silent majority out there. Unfortunately for him, he misunderstood what they were silent about, but there was a great silent majority. People don't speak up. They go about their business every day. Yeah, they watch the news, but they just don't have extreme views. And, that's fine. But those extreme views make for a radio. That's what's charged up radio today. I'm not a shock jock, quote.
Right.
I don't buy that stuff. So
is that kind of your frontier, because traditional media under such threat from internet and streaming and things like that, traditional newspapers, if I'm overgeneralizing, you'll forgive me. Is this kind of how talk radio or radio stations, traditional terrestrial radio stays, alive? Or
well, maybe AM. And we recently began simulcasting everything AM and FM. WSGW, AM and FM, and they're together. The only thing we separate out are sports. We did that because it's good business. And that's, we have to remember that broadcasting is a business. It's a bottom line business.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that's changed when we talk about polarization, the thing that's changed that is so different is social media. Social media has totally changed the game. The old way of doing things before your time. If a story happened, you might have heard about it on the radio with immediacy. Right now, you heard about it. Mm-hmm. Then you turned on your television to see the image of what happened, and then you picked up the newspaper to read the minutiae, the details. That was the progression of news in any given day. That's out the window now.
Of course.
Newspapers aren't anything like they used to be. In some communities, like here, you only get them a few days a week. It's centralized from some command post someplace else. So it's not the same as it used to be. And now you have social media people run to for information without any knowledge of its accuracy.
Yeah.
Without any concept of who's sending it, what their expertise is, what their qualifications are. None of that matters anymore. But if it meets your idea, then it must be right.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and in that whole process, a radio station, Art Lewis is there as a experienced person, seeing a lot of different types of, events and opinions, staying even keeled. How do you kind of maneuver your way to stay relevant, and meaning that, that people want to listen to you rather than, go on their machines and look on Facebook and what their friends said?
I do what I do. You take me for who I am. I haven't changed. I've been this way all my life and don't have any intention of changing. If I had to change in some way that I thought was negative to keep an audience, I'm done. Don't have to do this at 78. I do it because I want to do it and enjoy it, love it. If it got to the point where it wasn't fun anymore, I'm history.
If you're 35, if you told 35-year-old Art Lewis at this point, would you tell them that radio is probably not a great idea for the decades, and find another media outlet? And what would it be, or how would you, give career advice to your 35-year-old self?
No, I would have stuck with it because I enjoyed it, even though it was pablum back then. I mean, we weren't talking about these controversial issues. We were talking about community things, and you talk about issues that weren't polarizing. And you had guests. You had a lot of guests on, and I loved it. So, no, I would not have seen the failure to codify the fairness doctrine and what radio is today. I don't think anybody would have. But 1987 changed the broadcasting and changed the radio industry. There were a lot of other things that happened before that changed the industry. I like to say that the FCC made mistakes and fixed their mistakes with new mistakes and compounded mistakes with new mistakes.
Right.
And I'll give you an example of that. At one time, there were 7,000 radio stations in the United States. The FCC's, through something called the 8090 docket, opened that up to underserved communities getting a license.
All right.
Fair enough, right?
Sure.
So what's their idea of an underserved community? Now, we're sitting here in Saginaw, Michigan. When I came here, there were probably 18 to 20 radio signals, most of them local, in the Great Lakes Bay region, the Tri-Cities back at the time. Carlton got a license because it was underserved.
I see.
Hello? What are you talking about? We have that license today. It's our FM station, WSGW 100.5, is a Carlton license. Go figure. So all of a sudden now there's 10,000 radio stations, all vying for the same advertising dollars, which are being split up with television and newspaper and magazines. So now you got all these other stations fighting for this piece of pie. But the ownership rules didn't change. You can still only own
X.
One AM, one FM in a marketplace, and a max of, I think it was 20 or something like that nationally. So, oops, all of a sudden, what are they going to do? Well, they got rid of the ownership rules. The ownership rules were that if I was going to get a broadcast license, I had to prove that I could operate that facility for 3 years, even if I had no income. In other words, if they're going to give me a license, that license is for the betterment. That license is for the betterment of the community. I better be able to demonstrate that I can serve the community. They got rid of that, and guess what happened? Absentee investors
just bought.
I don't mean to slam a profession, but dentists in California started buying radio stations in New Jersey, and they bought it to do one thing: rape it to the bottom line and sell it. Well, 2 or 3 times go by where the next guy along does the same thing, and pretty soon you have a facility that can't make its debt payment.
Yeah, I don't think that worked, right? I mean, it
didn't work, because all of a sudden you had bankruptcies,
right,
which you never had in broadcasting. So what was the next answer? Well, the next answer was, okay, you can now own 5 radio stations in a community. No cap on how many you can own. So all of a sudden now you have an enormous amount of broadcast power concentrated in a few hands. Our company has 198 radio stations. We're small potatoes compared to iHeart or Cumulus. They have hundreds and hundreds. And I don't know that all that in the long term was for the better, but they had to figure out how to fix all the mistakes that were made along the way. So here you are today.
Someone, by 35-year-old art, I'm saying, okay, with your experience, or let's just say your 30-year-old grandchild comes to you, and that's a little, I know the age doesn't exactly work.
I don't have any, but okay.
Let's just say someone asked for career advice to Art today. I'm interested in TV or broadcasting, journalism, entertainment, but I don't want to be an actor.
You better be real good at the digital side, first of all, because digital has become everything. Secondly, I tell you to become a welder because you'll make a lot more money. But if you have a passion for it, then go for it.
You're still okay. I mean,
listen, I'm okay with people doing what they want to do that makes them happy. Sure. Not everybody is inclined to go after dollars. They'd rather go after happiness. Some people are very happy in a career making less money. Other people, it's all about the dollar, and they don't care what they do as long as they can make $1.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, Art, you've struck me all this time, and after listening to you with so many different types of guests, you have a clear curiosity of meeting other people, right?
Absolutely.
That I think, I'm quite sure that I'm not talking out of turn, which is that your listening audience over these decades have experienced similar things that I have listening to you as well as being your guest, which is you actually listen to the responses and actually have follow-up questions, because I don't think people even know this. So you and I've been your guest something like 15 times, or something like that in,
Yep.
Just under 7-8 years. We've never had a script of questions,
No, and I won't take questions from
which
guests.
is incredible because, I've
Well,
spoken at other media locations, et cetera, and it's always been, always being, 90% of the time, here are my feeder list of questions,
yeah.
that I would ask Jay. But you and
Well,
and
I won't
actually,
do it either. You know why? You know why? I'll give you an example of why I don't do it.
Hmm.
This is a great example. Many, many, many years ago, probably goes back to, I don't know, the 80s. I had a guest, a very high up auto executive from one of the biggest companies, a
Okay.
vice president. We'll leave it there.
All right.
Shows up with his entourage.
Right.
He comes into the studio with his PR guy who's got a book. So I go, well, Mr. Vice President, tell us about this in the auto company.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm asking the question, the PR guy is opening the pages of the book, slaps it in front of him, and he looks down and reads me the answer.
Right.
After about 20 minutes of that, during a commercial break, I looked at the PR guy and I said, take your damn book and get out of this studio. Oh, I can't do that. I said, either you do that or the interview's over. The vice president looked at him and said, go. It went from one of the worst interviews I ever had to one of the best, because once I got the guy out of the book,
Right.
I wasn't going to ask him stuff he didn't know about. He's vice president. He better know about it, And they're so afraid that somebody's going to say the wrong word or what have you. Turned out to be a great interview because I made him comfortable, got him down to conversation. And that is why I never, ever accept questions from a guest.
No, it's true.
I mean, if they have a topic they want to talk about, tell me what the topic is. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if what I have found in the past, if you get a preset list of questions, you're going to get a preset list of answers. That's not conversation. I want conversation. Also, anytime I've spoken to a broadcasting class about interview technique, the first thing I say is, there's no great secret. Be curious. I am a naturally curious person. And I have done you an enormous favor during this interview in that I have not turned the tables on you.
It's not a favor. I had other tactics up my sleeve here, Art.
None of which would have combated it.
I didn't say I would be able to execute it correctly. I just had different tactics in mind. That doesn't mean that I'd be any good at it.
You'd be good at it.
So after this act that you talked about having, the Fairness Act, now all of a sudden you can have opinionated opinions on
Yep.
On broadcast radio. Out of your experience, and I've just heard, like I said, little snippets, and maybe you can tell us a story from the past. Now, was it the Wild West immediately? Did everyone realize that all of a sudden, I just get to call Art and spew out anything at him?
I'm going to give you two words that described what happened. Rush Limbaugh
I see.
changed the face of radio.
Right.
Single-handedly
Right.
changed the face of radio. Whether you agreed with him or disagreed with him, didn't matter.
No, right.
He changed the face of radio because he immediately adapted to this new style.
And everyone
did
knew
in
it
an
as
entertaining
that?
way. Well, what happened was, of course, he came from the right, and conservatives for a long time felt that their voices weren't being heard.
Mm.
Now, all of a sudden, here's this guy on the radio spewing the same things they believe, and they flock to him.
Yeah.
Before that, you couldn't find those opinions. You couldn't find the far left either.
Right.
But the far left failed to learn how to do talk radio in an entertaining way. Rush came along, and he was first of all a radio guy, not a politician,
Yep.
and created the genre. All of us owe a lot to him for that. We may not look at things the way he does,
Sure.
or did, because he's passed now.
Right.
But we still owe him a great deal for creating what we have today.
The genre. By the way, has the far left figured out how to make it entertaining yet, or no?
No,
It doesn't sound like it, right?
They've had a couple of runs at it. There was a guy named Ed Schultz a few years ago, a number of years ago.
Never heard of that. I've never heard of this name.
We had him. That's the problem.
Yeah. We
had him for a few years. I think 3 years or something like that. He passed away, but he was. I used to call him the Rush Limbaugh from the left because he copied a lot of what Rush did, only from the left. He tried to do a lot of the same stuff.
I don't think that
from the
works,
left
though, right?
viewpoint. Well, nobody listened. We couldn't get an audience, and there's a lot of Democrats around here. I mean, Bay County is loaded with Democrats.
No, I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying
and we
is
couldn't get them to listen.
And let's just take the extremes, because I think that's probably because one of the things that you and I get along personally is that, these far extremes, I'm usually like, you can just talk to my hand, and
yes.
But also the far left has a problem, right? Because the persons that they would throw rocks at also means that that's your store owner. You know what I mean? Like at the far extreme, like, some taxation or something that looks or feels like socialism at all, you've got a problem. You see what I'm saying? In other words, there's no natural.
Yeah, I would have told you yes a year ago. I'm not so sure that's true today, because they got their socialist tenets out there. Their tentacles are reaching, and there is more acceptance. And part of that, I think, has to do with the educational system and how we brought young people up. Not totally, but part of it. I would have given you different answers 15 years ago, but it's changed.
Oh, I'm not disputing that it's changed. That part I totally agree. Whether or not it's going to ultimately be effective, though,
total no, I don't think so. Totally.
I think it's actually. I actually think you saw evidence of it in this past November, which is, the sitting president lost, but the other results weren't. This was not just some overwhelming.
Oh, Democrats lost ground in the House.
Absolutely, and you can see where they lost, which is, for example, I've spent a fair amount of time in South Florida doing this, that, and the other, and even speaking to public and going to different places which were not tourist places.
Makes sense for Medicare.
Exactly. And for my public speaking. But the thing is that, when the message is to certain persons, well, that is a socialist bent, and then they reject it when everything else should have said that they'd be a natural voter for the Democratic Party, you got a problem. You've got a big messaging problem. That's why I was asking about your radio issue, which is that I'm not sure that the far left has the ability to throw a rocket, because the far right does, right? They can just say, okay, that guy is to blame. 1 point, the Chinese are to blame.
Yeah, but the left blames the right. And here's the thing that we all have to be concerned about. I don't care if it's left or right. And that's incrementalism. If I say to you, this is the policy I want, well, let's take minimum wage, for example. Let's say it's $10 an hour. And I say to you, Mr. Opponent of mine, we're going to get $15 an hour. By goodness, that's what we're going to get. I demand it. We're going to get it. and we end up at $12 an hour.
Right.
Incrementally, I've moved my way. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing incrementalism in some of these movements toward socialism, because as I'm reminded by my audience regularly, we already have socialism. We have Medicare. We have Social Security. These are socialistic type programs, the government taking care of the masses. So
I'm saying that would too much further. For example, if we take a look at the, Democratic Socialist America with DSA, for example, ultimately my issue with the way that, and the question about the far left and whether or not that makes good radio, if it's even possible. I'm just saying that structurally, to me, that won't work, because structurally, if you're from the far left and want to be a popular person on the radio, you're going to end up throwing a rock at the person funding the radio station or funding the advertising.
Well, yeah, to a degree. But by the same token, if throwing that rock garners an audience and the radio station sells that audience to the guy you're throwing the rock at and his business goes up, he could care less about the rock you're throwing if it happens,
I'd agree with that also, except that when you start throwing that rock will hit Wall Street. And they will shut it down.
Yeah, eventually. Eventually, yeah.
Because make no mistake, right? I mean, the middle left, that's funded by who? That's funded by,
everybody.
Everybody, but the money,
the
big check comes from the very well-off, slightly left. And who's that? Candidly speaking, that is in Manhattan on Wall Street. And
well, it's interesting. I always had always told folks, when you look at the left and right, the left doesn't want to tell you how to live your life, but they want to control your money. The right doesn't want to control your money, but they want to tell you how to live your life. So
fair enough.
And somewhere in between is the truth.
Well, we're not going to. I think the safest thing that we can say is that you and I are not probably going to settle that today.
Never. Never will be.
No, that is true. So what's up next here, Art? I mean, you've done everything. What is left to accomplish for Art Lewis on a personal level in the world of broadcasting? Not leave out your personal and, golfing your age or something like that.
Nothing. I listen, if I could show you and take my camera and up on top of my credenza here are all the awards I've won. There they are. Whoopee. I mean, it's nice, but, it's nice to be recognized. By the same token, I've pretty well accomplished what I want to accomplish. I just want to keep doing it. That's what I want to accomplish. I want to do it. I had a boss one time, took me out to lunch and said, we got to talk about retirement, but I have a feeling that your idea of retirement is expired to retire. And I said, yeah, that's exactly my idea of retirement. So that's where it's at. As long as I have I'll tell you a great story. There is a very famous doctor in this area, Malcolm Fields, one of the top neurosurgeons in the country. Now, Malcolm's in his 80s now, and he doesn't surgically practice anymore, but he still goes into the office every day.
Mm.
He still makes rounds at 5 o'clock in the morning, But I once to ask him, Malcolm, and he's a good friend of ours, and I asked him, Malcolm, how long are you going to keep doing this? And he said, well, I got my eyes, my mind, and my hands. If they hold me up, I can still do the surgery, Well, since that time, his hands have left him reliably, so he doesn't do surgery anymore. I tell people, my mind and mouth work, I can sit in this chair and do this job forever, until the good Lord says, you're done. And that's it. So I don't have any plans, aspirations, changes, none of that. I'm on a list somewhere to be considered for the Michigan Association of Broadcasters Radio Hall of Fame. Gee, that's nice. The way you get there is to be old. Yeah. So, if I make it, great. If I don't, wonderful. Just to be on the list was fine. And that's it. I just, you can't wake up worrying about those things. I wake up worrying about, I have to fill 2.5 hours. What am I going to do? So, there you go.
What's the radio station going to do? I mean, meaning that is there the next Art Lewis at WSGW right now?
I have no idea. There are probably wannabes. Well, there are, I'm sure. And there are not wannabes. There are people that don't want anything to do with it. Don't even think of me when that happens. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, way early on, my dad told me everybody's replaceable.
Of course.
If I'm gone, somebody else will come along to fill that bill. In the same way, when I came here in 1974, I was teamed up with a guy named Fred Krell. Fred was a broadcasting institution in Saginaw, an icon if there ever was one. Never going to be able to replace Fred Krell. Never, ever, ever. Here I am. He retired in 85, and guess who became the next Fred Krell? I didn't replace Fred Krell. They just changed to me.
The world evolved, and
the world goes on. I mean, you cannot think of yourself as being the only one that could ever do this.
Of course.
That's nonsense. I know that.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed this a lot, Art.
Yeah, me too.
I've been your guest.
You owe me.
Let's go back to the story. The original story is the following. Is that the first time I was there with you, before you get too high up on your horse of you owe me, let me remind you that the first time I was there, your second hour guest called you during the first hour and said, I'm not going to be there. You were stuck without a second hour guest.
No, I wasn't. I had you.
And you looked at it, what are you doing?
Well, so let me tell you what you didn't see.
Okay.
Let me tell you what you didn't see.
All right. Okay.
When I go into the studio, or in this case, my home studio, I am prepared to talk for 2.5 hours.
I got you.
Have to be.
Yeah.
Because it's conceivable, nobody will call.
Right.
It's conceivable a guest calls in sick or misses it or whatever. I am never without material. I may look that way. It may feel that way. I may have told you that. But the reality is, if everything went to heck in a handbag in 5 minutes,
oh yeah,
I have to go. I have 2 hours to fill.
Oh, that part I didn't not dispute. That part of it.
As Rush Limbaugh used to say, he goes into the studio with a stack of stuff.
Right.
I have a shredder, a big shredder here in my office. I fill it up about every week, and I'm constantly. They laugh at me at the radio station. The radio station is closed to the public, but there are about 8 or 10 people that go in regularly, including my general manager. And I go in there pretty regularly because I know where the paper stash is. So I grab a couple of reams of paper, bring them home. So I walk in the door. He says, "Oh, you're here to steal paper?" I said, "Yep." So
well, thank you so much.
Life is good.
Before we go, let's remind everyone where all the different platforms are now, because this is new. And, your listening audience may not be fully up to speed on all the different places. So so you're on Twitch.
So let's start with the radio.
Okay.
790 AM, 100.5 FM. And it's simulcast. You hear me on both, same time.
And the internet is wsgw.com.
Correct. And you can hear the stream on the website.
Right.
But you can now watch me do my shows on twitch.tv/WSGW radio.
Okay.
On Facebook, on Twitter.
So on Facebook, is that the WSGW page?
WSGW radio, one of those has it. There's 3 or 4, but just click on them. You'll see it.
Okay. WSGW. Okay.
Yeah. YouTube, you put in my name, Art Lewis Show. It'll come up.
And that's live, or is that
live? Live. We're live from 9 in the morning Eastern time.
Yep.
Until 11:30. The 11 to 11:30 show is called Focus, where we focus on a business in the community or an individual in the community. But 9 to 11 is the Art Lewis show. And we either have guests or we have open lines, or a combination thereof.
You know, I guess the one thing is that I wish, if I had any wish, I wish that more or that the station and the location and your viewpoint had, more wattage, just pure power, just pure wattage.
Well, we're 5,000 watts during the day AM, and then the FM. So we cover, when we simulcast to the FM, we picked up some area that the FM covered, the AM didn't. But realistically, mid-Michigan is our target audience. That's where we make our money. What happens in the outskirts with more power doesn't bring any more money. So you have to concentrate on your focus. So the Great Lakes Bay region and the immediate surrounding counties, that's our primary target.
Sure. I was more talking about from the other perspective of the fact that, with your experience and, your common sense approach and, just genuine interest in talking to the interviewee, et cetera, and being able to handle questions without telling them that they're a nut bag one, or a gas bag one way or the other, and just handling it as just a refreshing, just every day where most people live. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I appreciate it. I've never had national aspirations. Back in 1995, a friend of mine invited me down to Louisville to fill in for their number one morning personality, a guy named Wayne Perky, on WHAS radio, 50,000 watt blowtorch.
Wow.
Heard in 35 states.
Yeah, right.
So here I come out of Saginaw and I sit down and I do this show. And one of the things we did, and I had a producer and an engineer and all these people that I'm not used to, but I'm glad they were there because they told me what the flow was going to be and what to do, when to do it.
Sure.
One of the things we did was some movie contest, a question about some movie. So I asked the question. Now, if I did that in Saginaw, first call might be from Birch Run, Bay City, Midland, Frankenmuth, whatever, right? So I asked the question. I'm in Louisville. First call was from Salt Lake City. Second call was from Memphis. Third call was from St. Louis, I think. All over the country.
Yeah.
Real eye-opener. Yeah. There's an old adage, big fish in a little pond, or little fish in a big pond. Now, I'm a New Yorker. I worked in suburban New York City before I came here. I have discovered that it's much more fun to be a big fish in a little pond.
Gotcha.
Much more fun and a lot less pressure.
Right. Understood.
So if you're happy with what you have and you're happy with your life, you don't always have to be looking for the next big thing, You have to have the motivation to do the job. You have to have the passion to do the job. But you don't always have to be aggressively seeking that next dollar, that next big thing. I want more people to know me. I don't care about that. I don't care if you recognize me. That. Oh, be quiet. Big B. I don't. A big Bixby, whatever it is.
Oh,
I don't care if you recognize me in the store. Personally, I'm happy when you don't.
Right.
I did television for quite a while, in association with radio and otherwise. And you give up too much of your privacy. Yeah. My wife and I, we're pretty private people. We have a lot of acquaintances, but we have a small circle of friends.
Right.
Very small circle of friends. We were out with a couple the other day. He happens to be an appeals court judge. He and his wife are both judges. And we were talking, and I said, you're among our very, very few close friends. And we were friends with his parents for a long time. And he looked at me and said, you're the same with us. We're homebodies. We have our likes and dislikes, but we don't do a lot of socialization. Mainly, for me, I dealt with people all day long. I want to go home, you know? I want to go get away from it. One of the things that, and I never would say this to anybody doing it, but I have people come up to me and they want to talk politics. No, that's what the radio show's for, all the time. But what do you think of this? And do you think I heard you say this? And well, call the show and talk to me about it. Listen, it's one of the sacrifices of being in the public eye.
Sure.
You live with it.
Sure.
But doesn't mean you have to like it, But you can't be rude to these people. They're your bread and butter.
Absolutely.
So what do? You get on with it.
Thank you so much, Art. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Art Lewis. Thanks for having and being here with me today.
Pleasure, Jay.
All right.
Fun. No, I got to tell you, folks, I've known Jay now for 8 books.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember edition 1 of Maximize Your Medicare, and that's where we first met. It's always fun chatting with him and learn a lot from him about a topic of which I don't know a lot. And that's the fun of it. And he's one of the brightest guys I know and has too damn many initials after his name.
My original name's too short. I needed more letters, Art.
That's what it was, yes. Oh. We'll do it again.
I would enjoy that. Thanks, Art. Have a
All right, Jay. Take care. Bye-bye, my friend.
That's it for today. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way you can be told when new videos are posted. Last, don't forget about GH2 Unfiltered. I'll send you a free copy of Maximize Your Medicare to first-time subscribers. That's at www.gh2unfiltered.com, where you can get my subscription site comments that I can't release to people in public here on the YouTube channel. Thanks.